So the Avengers game that they announced all the way back in 2017 is finally out, and it is really, really weird, and I don't know, I don't know what I was expecting. Going from being so hyped to this game when it first got announced, to finally having a big AAA Avengers game, to seeing the reveal at E3, to being like, oh, this doesn't look very good, and then seeing all the microtransaction stuff, and then now finally coming out. I don't know, it's been a really weird road with this game, and now that it's finally here, I am underwhelmed, I guess, but not surprised. It's literally everything about the game is fine. It is the most mediocre, average, fine game maybe that I've ever played. There's a lot of things I really like, and a lot of things I also hate. So, I don't know. The weird thing is that there's really nothing, interesting to talk about that much. It's because when you look on the surface, you see all the different gear stuff and just everything in the game with all the different just stuff, and you're there's a bunch here, but when you really look into it, there's not that much to dive super deep into. So my kind of first thing is that simply the game does not work on conceptually or in execution. For some reason, the weird looter shooter third person superhero game thing that they're going for, in my opinion, just does not work whatsoever. So just kind of moving into the gameplay, since it's obviously a game, let's talk about the gameplay and see how it goes, and I'll get into the campaign and story and microtransactions and all that stuff, and we'll just talk about everything. So the gameplay at its basic level is fine, and actually can be pretty fun. Going through all the heroes, Hulk is probably the only person I didn't really enjoy playing, which I don't really know how they made Hulk boring, but he just was, I don't know, something about him just didn't work for me. It just felt sloppy, and I just did not enjoy it. Thor I also thought was fine. Captain America I thought was pretty fun. Black Widow I thought was pretty fun. Also Miss Marvel I thought was pretty solid. But Iron Man was by far the one that I played the most, and definitely my favorite. Especially with all the different upgrades you can do and all the sheer amount of moves that everyone has for all their upgrades, I don't want to say that that was a concern I kind of had, is that every hero is just going to kind of play the same, kind of as a Lego game where they have their X and their Y attack and they just all kind of play the same. I don't really feel that way, especially with, like I said, all the different upgrades that they have for all their different moves. The general gameplay between the heroes has enough variety, which is good. That was one of the main things I was worried about. Again, depending on the heroes you're really into and you really have fun playing, I think it's just up to personal opinion, but for me, definitely Iron Man by far was the one that I most enjoyed. However, that doesn't change the fact that everything you're going to be doing in this game, you're going to be fighting AIM robots or AIM people every single time you do anything, and it is not interesting. Specifically robots, because a lot of, I guess, the way that fun is had in games is kind of with the atmosphere, the kind of even if I guess the mechanics aren't all there, it's about what you're really doing, what you're, I guess, who you're fighting and just things like that. And fighting AIM robots that are just nothing is not interesting. This kind of applies to the campaign as well, where no real mission kind of stands out gameplay-wise, because they're all just fine. They're literally just kind of like the post-game stuff, and I'm going to talk about Destiny probably a billion times during this, but Destiny campaign, it's not the first game, because it was terrible in that game. The campaign wasn't very good in the second one either, but that same kind of thing where you just, because of the basic gameplay loop, you just kind of do the same thing over and over again, which again for Destiny, I'll talk about it in a little bit, but I do feel like it works obviously in that game, when it doesn't really work here. There are a few moments that kind of really stand out in this game that I really enjoyed, like the Iron Man moment when he's flying up to the space station. I really enjoyed that. I just thought that was a cool moment, and there are very fun moments in here that kind of separate from the normal gameplay loop that I thought were very solid. However, mainly the gameplay overall was just average, fine, it was mediocre. However, I had no problem doing it, and I still had fun with the campaign because I was striving to actually finish it. I wanted to see what happened with the story, I wanted to unlock the new characters, I was working towards something, and I did really enjoy it. However, once the campaign finished, my motivation dipped so quickly because everything post-campaign is just so stale and so average, and I just couldn't stand it. It was the most average thing that I've ever seen, and I really didn't enjoy it. So yeah, let's kind of dive into the other stuff from the game, and then we'll kind of talk back to the gameplay and all that stuff. Let's talk about the campaign story, which for me was definitely by far the best part of the game. I really enjoyed playing this. I was kind of worried when they announced that Kamala Khan was going to be the main character, because I was that's kind of weird for an Avengers game, and I still think it struggles kind of balancing that all out and a bunch of stuff, but I really enjoyed her presence. She's a character I've loved in the comics since they've introduced her, and I love that she's actually being exposed to more people, and they're going to start reading the comics about her. I think that's all super cool. She's a very neat character who I didn't really love that much, but I enjoyed her in the comics, but I really enjoyed her in this, which I thought was very cool. Really playing through the campaign and seeing the story kind of play out. It was just kind of being a fan of the Avengers and of superheroes and of these characters. It was just cool seeing a new Avengers story with new interpretations of these characters play out. And that was just something I just on a base level, no matter how good it is, I just enjoyed. And I don't think it was bad at all. I think it was actually pretty solid. she had a great presence, like I said, Kamala Khan, and just, I do kind of like the idea of this like pre-established thing where the Avengers have some terrible event on A-Day, and then someone like Kamala has to come bring them all together. I also like the idea of this universe already being an established Avengers universe where Hank Pym exists, and Nick Fury and Maria Hill, and just all the obviously like Marvel-centric characters, and everything already exists. Like Ant-Man, or when they finally meet Hank Pym, he's obviously already has time as Ant-Man, but now like he can't do it anymore because of what AIM did when they kidnapped him. So I'm sure, like, I don't know, maybe we'll get like Scott Lang or something at some point. And just all the different side characters and villains are already established. And I also really liked a lot of the like interpretations of these characters. I really enjoyed Iron Man. There were some great like Iron Man moments, like I already talked about in here. Captain America at the beginning especially has some great moments. Hulk, I also really enjoyed. I thought Troy Baker did a very good job. I just enjoyed kind of how there was a lot of focus with him and Kamala in the beginning. I thought that was very cool, and there were just a lot of great moments very true to these characters, and I would honestly really like love to see more of this universe. I don't really want like a sequel to this game, but like if they could kind of make some DLC, some more story DLC or something that kind of expanded on more of these characters, I feel like that'd be very cool, and I'd love to see more of this universe. And I do think the story actually started off pretty strong, and there were a lot of parts of it that I did really enjoy, especially when like the focus was on Bruce, Kamala, and Tony. I thought it was pretty solid. And then it's weird because the game kind of feels like it starts running out of time as it goes along, and it keeps adding in more Avengers and more Avengers until we have obviously the full lineup, and then everyone gets less and less time to shine, and it just gets sloppy by the end. Especially at the very end of the game, I really enjoyed like the moment with Kamala at the end when she's like fighting MODOK, which that was weird when MODOK gets in like the Kree Sentry. That was kind of weird, but they wanted like a big giant fight with her, which I thought was a cool moment, and I did enjoy it. However, right after that, the game kind of just like stops off. She has like a closure moment with like her father, and it's a great scene, and I really enjoyed that. But there's never any like say things like with how the Avengers are doing now, or like just anything. And I don't know, I feel like it just had a lot of potential, but it just kind of felt rushed. And there's this whole thing where like Bruce and Tony fight, but then it's over in like a second, and I don't know. Again, it's really hard to balance since the Avengers aren't the main characters, I guess. Kamala is, but it's also an Avengers game, and they're also obviously a giant part of the game. So for them to not really have any like closure or just like ending shot or anything for any members besides Kamala just felt really odd and incomplete, and for me it just kind of feels like it falls apart at the end. I did still enjoy the story, however, and I haven't even talked about MODOK, because MODOK is he's like a half character. He's just a creation by AIM meant to kill things, and he's cool, he's kind of funny, I think he's like neat, I enjoy when he shows up, but it was a very interesting call making him the main villain of the game, especially when it's a very different like version of MODOK entirely, where it's like George Harlton, and then he becomes MODOK, and he like his like obviously his like head's getting bigger. It was really weird, and I didn't hate it. I thought he did like served his purpose fine. I'm not the best thing I've ever seen, but I didn't hate it. I just think it was weird that he was the character MODOK, because I don't think they ever even touched on he's like I'm MODOK at the end, and they never touch on why he's called MODOK, or just it was weird. The stuff with the actual Avengers and Kamala especially, I did really enjoy. There were memorable character moments with interpretations, like I said. I just felt like I didn't get enough time with them, which is what I was kind of worried about. And like I already mentioned, the campaign missions gameplay-wise are incredibly bland. And also something I thought was really weird is that there were like no boss fights really in the main campaign besides Abomination at the beginning, Monica, and then MODOK at the end. That's literally it, unless I'm missing one, but I don't think I am. Just, I don't know, it felt kind of weird. But again, I still am trying to stress enough that I did enjoy the campaign, I did enjoy the story, and if you find this game for say $20 in like a year, and you just want to play a new Avengers story with new versions of these characters, I would say go for it, because you probably won't be disappointed. Even though the campaign gameplay is kind of bland and the story is not as fleshed out as it could be, I still think it was decently solid. However, that's about, for me, really all it offers for its $60 price tag. It is of course worth noting that this game, for some reason, more than a lot of other games I played in recent memory, was absolutely plagued with bugs and glitches and technical issues, and I never say this, but it actually like started affecting my enjoyment of cutscenes, because I couldn't like focus on the cutscene because like either Kamala's face wouldn't load in, or her little scarf thing was like clipping through her thing, or textures weren't loading in, especially like when things are going on, terrible frame drops, like horrible, just a bunch of glitches. I know they just released their first patch, I think like a day or two ago, depending on when this video goes up, but it had over 1,000 bugs that needed to fix, which is absolutely ridiculous for a microtransaction riddled $60 AAA release. So that was weird. Like I said, the gameplay was fine enough in the campaign. However, when we get to the endgame content, it's pretty abysmal, and this is pretty much where I fall apart. The main thing I think where it like falls apart for me is that there's no motivation to do anything. Because the loot, unlike in Destiny, which I'll talk about in a little bit, the loot doesn't matter. You can't see the loot that you get. The loot feels meaningless. It's not fun to get. It's not when you like do a mission at the, or like, yeah, you do some sort of mission and then you go into like the room with all the chests at the end. You're like, what I get? You just don't ever feel like you're like, oh, I got some like Black Widow like staff but like it doesn't matter. You don't feel it. It does not feel how it should feel to get, especially at the end. And you're not striving to get anything because, like I said, the loot you can't actually see, so it doesn't like affect you. The stats don't like mean enough to actually like make you care. You're trying to balance doing this with like 6 different characters, so just especially with that way, it gets incredibly grindy. And you're not even really, the only motivation I found right when I finished the campaign, I was like, okay, I want to make sure I get like Kamala's suit, so I did the stuff to get that, and I had a decent enough time, and I also was like, I want to get Black Widow's suit, so I had a decent enough time to doing that. And then after that, I literally just grinded more missions because I was like, let's see what else we can do. But that's it. There's nothing there. I can't even describe it. It's so like empty and like there's just nothing there to grab onto. And also, I would have absolutely no problem grinding and doing these missions if I was getting things I actually cared about. But I don't care about emotes. I don't care about the suits. We'll get to in a sec because that is one of my biggest problems with this game. The takedowns, it's ridiculous. You only get 2 before you have to like grind for unlocking all the others. The nameplates are cool, but also not big enough to actually care about. And just, the gameplay isn't solid enough to stand on its own and motivate you to do post-game content, which is also one of the biggest problems. There are things that they're adding in, which we'll talk about in a sec with like all the post stuff, but I don't know, it just does not come together in a way, especially at the end, that just doesn't work. And the suits. If you're making a superhero game, you better make sure you include the obvious choices, or just good-looking suits in general. Every single character in this game, I have never seen like a less like caring about putting in quality suits. Where are the suits from the comics? Where I don't know if they can do MCU suits because of like legal stuff, but where are the MCU suits? Where are the suits from the comics? Just looking at like Iron Man, he is one of the superheroes with the most costumes like in history, besides like Spider-Man and like Batman. Obviously, it's Iron Man. He has, like, armor that he built, so obviously he keeps building new ones over and over and over again. And there are so little suits from the comics. They have the original Sin suit, which is cool, but my main problem, and this kind of applies for all the suits, for all the characters, is they just feel like basic, like, just barely effort put in changing a couple colors of the main character model, because they obviously didn't make, like, significantly different models. They did for a few, which I think is cool, but they're also ones that are straight from the campaign, and they're not different enough to where they feel meaningful. If I was making an Iron Man game, or he was in an Iron Man game, and I had to put in a bunch of alternate suits, I would be like, obviously let's put the Mark 1 in there, let's put like maybe the all new, all different suit, Silver Centurion. Like there's so many Iron Man suits, and just for all the characters, you're like, alright, Hulk, we're putting Hulk in the game, let's make some alternate suits for him. I would be like, okay, obviously Joe Fixit, which they do have, which is cool. I'd be like, Joe Fixit, Red Hulk, Gladiator Hulk, no Red Hulk, no like Gladiator, there's none of the obvious choices. All of Captain America's I hate, and just the suits are terrible. That is one of my biggest issues with this game, because if you're making a superhero game, that is one of the #1 things you need to get right. And that they're all terrible I just hate that they're all so like showing of like their the type of game that they're from, I guess. That they're like these basic, you just have to grind from, they're just different colors, they might as well just be shaders at that point, and just, I don't feel like care was put into the suits at all, which is a very big thing in a superhero game, especially when your gameplay is not fun enough to actually motivate people to play just based on that. You need for cool things for them to unlock, a la suits in a superhero game. So I don't know, that's one of my biggest issues with this game, because it doesn't motivate, because I was like, if there's an Iron Man suit, or like an MCU Iron Man suit from like Iron Man 1 or like the first Avengers movie, I will grind all day to play with that, and I love playing as it, because it would be fun, but there's nothing like that. I have no motivation to do anything, and it sucks. The missions after you finish the campaign are pretty much all conceptually the same things that you've been doing the entire campaign, which again I kind of expected because it is kind of similar like Destiny, but you just go to some location and you punch enemies or objectives until the goal is complete, and then you get your loot that you don't care about, and that's it. And you level up your power level, you level up your like XP level, you unlock nameplates and takedowns and emotes, and whoop-de-doo, it's not exciting. Like I said, I do think the skills part is kind of cool. Like, that's the most fun thing probably to level up, like getting new moves, especially, like I said, with Iron Man, like getting the rockets and the lasers and just all his different iconic moves, I think is very cool. But again, that's not enough to, like, motivate you to actually keep playing this game. And that also kind of goes in line with the live service stuff, which we were all kind of concerned about this game when they said, we're going to keep expanding onto it for years, and then all that stuff. Like, I'm excited to play as Black Panther. I want to play as Black Panther. I want to play as Hawkeye. I want to play as Spider-Man. Somehow I'll figure that out, but they're not here yet. They're not in the game right now, and if they were here, that would obviously be more variety and more characters that hopefully are fun. And it's 2 weeks after launch currently, or like 2 or 3 by now, and they haven't really hit us with anything like big, no big like events. They are the, I don't even know what they were called, but they're some, like the big events kind of things that remind me of raids a little bit, but even though not really, that I think they were adding in today. But from what I've seen, you don't like get any still exciting loot from it. So the only thing motivating you obviously is it's fun, I enjoy it, but I don't enjoy it enough to do that, so it sucks. And just the thing with the credit system and the microtransactions and how each character has their own battle pass filled with items that I don't care about, it just is really gross. And it's just a microtransaction riddle. It's not like so bad where like you need them to like progress, but it's just they're there and you don't care about anything. Which I think is almost the funny thing is I would never, like, unless there's a suit that I like love, which again they might add in later, I couldn't even imagine paying for a single cent of anything in this game. So I don't know. And it's just basically trying to give players the same replayability with this looter shooter thing as something like Destiny, obviously. And it was more like Destiny than I ever thought it would be, with the bounties and the vendors and literally just everything. However, I have my fair share of issues with Destiny. I really enjoy Destiny, but I also hate a lot of things about it, basically with how like the first and second game were like released and marketed and all that stuff. But one thing I've never had a problem with in Destiny is the gunplay, because it's Bungie and it's fantastic and it's so much fun that I will always enjoy playing. I have no problem just grinding for things in Destiny because the gameplay and gunplay is so fun, and that for me is what always has carried it. Destiny also has like Crucible, which is something to give you a nice break from the PvE content. And that also is for a $60 price tag, which obviously this game has that too, but there's nothing, like no PvP obviously, and just nothing to give you like a break from the monotony of what you're doing every single mission, and it's just, it gets so incredibly stale. Basically, just after you beat the campaign, it gets incredibly tiresome to play, and it just falls apart for me. And as it stands right now, like roughly 2 weeks after launch, there's just no reason for me to play. I will say, it is a little bit more fun to play with friends or even randoms online, but still, it's not a big enough departure for me to actually become, like, fully invested in this game and for it to be a fun and memorable experience, and I'm overall just left kind of disappointed. So yeah, I'm not super happy with this game, but I'm also not surprised. I think we all kind of saw this coming. I did enjoy the campaign, like I said, and the story, and specifically Miss Marvel, and a lot of the interpretations of the characters. Like I said, if you see this game a year from now for 20 bucks and you just want to check out the campaign, I would say go for it. You probably won't be disappointed, and I don't regret my time playing the campaign at all, because there were moments that I really enjoyed, and I had a good time with it. However, I would never recommend you pay $60 for this game unless you at least can try out the gameplay first. Because the gameplay's, like I said, it's fun, but not fun enough. It's like, it's fine. It's fine. That is what I'm trying to say. It is average. It can be fun, but it also can get tiresome after a while. I did enjoy most of the missions, but towards the end, I started getting a little bored, and then everything outside the main story is honestly just so unappealing. The loot, the gear system, none of it works together in the way that they're trying to do for this weird superhero thing, and it could if they would just make some more exciting mission variety, put in more suits, take out some of the microtransaction stuff, and put in more reasons for you to play and more like unique things other than just grinding for suits that you don't care about because there aren't cool suits in this game, and there aren't exciting like emotes, and there aren't fun nameplates. You need more stuff to unlock. And again, maybe they'll do a sequel and they'll see how it goes, but it sounds like they're going to be focusing on the live service stuff for now. And hey, maybe we'll see a game like Gotham Knights that's coming out next year. Maybe that game will kind of do something similar, and it seems like it might be doing a little bit, but hopefully I assume a lot better. And we'll just have to see how it goes. Anyways, I will be checking out this game continuing in the future as the characters come in and they add in. I definitely want to play as Spider-Man, obviously. That's going to be awesome. I want to play as Hawkeye. I want to play as Black Panther. And maybe if they add in some more interesting content, which I'm assuming they will eventually, and hopefully this game will end up like Destiny, where it becomes a very solid experience in a few years. But for now, I'm really done with the game, and I honestly have already started forgetting about it, besides the stuff I did for this video. So after I post this, I probably won't be thinking about it, at least until Hawkeye comes out, which who knows when that'll be. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about Marvel's Avengers. Have you played it? What do you think about it? What do you think about the suits? What do you think about the campaign, the story, the looter shooter gear stuff, and just everything about this game? And if you've played it, do you like it or do you not like it? That is all. Thank you all for watching. Majestic Gaming.